everybody. Hello, hello. Welcome to my live stream. Let's make sure we are good. Yes, perfect. Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. Welcome. Welcome to our Cello Tip Thursday live stream. Now, for those of you who have been watching these for a while, you must realize, angle on Instagram. There we go. That's better. Those of you who have been watching these for a while must realize this is really early in March. I usually don't do these until the end of the month. And the reason for that, you will see on both Instagram and YouTube, I have pinned a comment for the Rock Orchestra. And I am so excited. I did announce this last month, but I am going to be going on tour. I am going to be the cellist in the cast of the Rock Orchestra for most of March, the latter half of March. So you'll see in the comments, I pinned a link to their US tour dates. And even if they're not coming to your city, they're going to be touring the US for all of May, and you got to check this out. Everything from Metallica, My Chemical Romance, everything in between. It's all rock on a small, it's almost like a big chamber ensemble, or a mini orchestra. We're all playing on electric instruments, electric string instruments, I should say. And then there's winds and brass and incredible singers. So if you are in Lafayette, Louisiana, Austin, San Angelo, Midland, Odessa, Abilene, San Antonio, Lubbock, Texas, or Albuquerque, New Mexico, if you're near any of those cities, I'm going to be there too, playing in the Rock Orchestra. So if you want to check those out, would love to see some dolls in the audience for the Rock Orchestra concerts. That would be amazing. Check out the ticket link. You'll be taken to the website. You can look at the tour dates. So, anywho, that's my big exciting update. I'm so excited to go on tour for March. And yes, we are covering cello tips and tricks and questions regarding the music industry, cello playing, cello practice. Oh, thank you so much on YouTube. Yes, I am very excited and very grateful to be joining the Rock Orchestra. The musicians are phenomenal. The music is fantastically arranged. So, all right, we have our first question. Have you ever used a cello Krentz modulator? Oh, thank you. Cello Krentz modulator. Mine has one, and I am trying to figure out the best spot for it. The cello has bright and warm properties. I'm not entirely sure what that is. I might learn something new today with all of you. Is it similar to a wolf eliminator? I could totally be wrong. I'm going to Google it. What is that? Yeah, what is this? Oh, okay. Okay. Ah. Whoa. Whoa. Designed. Oh, okay. This is very interesting. I don't know about these. Whoa. These are cool. Hold on. I don't want to give too much. Oh, I see. Oh, okay. I know what these are. Sorry. Okay. I know what they are. Okay. Cool. Okay. I actually found an article that might help This looks like a helpful article from a luthier in London. So for those of you who don't know, I didn't know they were called this. That's cool. Oh, I see. Okay. So I actually haven't used one of these. On a cello, you might see this brass piece on a string. That's called a wolf eliminator. Other cellists, you'll see it kind of looks like a black dot. It's smaller than a dime, kind of that big. And they're put, I believe they're held together with a magnet, and you can kind of move them around to highlight certain parts of your cello. It basically is a it's a small weight that counteracts some of the acoustic properties of the instrument. Since most professional instruments, if not all, are handmade, there are going to be tiny flaws because, you know, they're handmade. And to get measurements exactly right is very difficult. So they kind of help to counteract notes that aren't as vibrant. I hate to say it, I don't feel comfortable giving you advice because I've never used one of these before. I've been very curious about them, but I don't want to tell you to do something to your cello when I don't have experience with it. Honestly, I would just Google it, and if you do some research, find some articles. Here's one from a luthier that I just found. I really hope you like it. I've been curious about these myself. What I will tell you though about anything, one thing about anything, any of these modifiers or a wolf tone eliminator, I will caution you, they will change with the weather and the humidity of your climate. So sometimes I'll have my wolf eliminator somewhere, and then if it's a very humid day the next day, I have to kind of experiment and wiggle it around because with the humidity, the wood changes slightly. Actually, living in Las Vegas and being in the desert, the fluctuations aren't too bad, so I haven't had to adjust it too much actually. But back when I was on the East Coast and the humidity was very different, the old saying, if you're from New England, if you don't like the weather, wait 15 minutes. That's like a New England saying. I was having to adjust this all the time. So what I will say is, if for some reason you really get it in a spot that you like it, and then one day you're like, my cello doesn't sound that great, if the weather has changed, you might need to make some adjustments. So good luck with that. I should do some research on it. Again, I've been very curious. I get very nervous having something on the inside that I can't manipulate, but I have so many colleagues who swear by them. So awesome. Great. All right. Very good. Let's see. Any other questions? I don't see any, and that's fine. What I can do is I can definitely talk about any topics that I have been experimenting with. Sorry, I'm just adjusting. Oh no! Man down! Sorry, guys. Oh, Lord. Lord. Okay. Yeah, it's fine. It's very on brand for me to have something fall over. So it shouldn't be that surprising. Okay. Yeah, I can still... Sorry, y'all. It's not very professional looking of me. I'm just so particular about camera angles and everything looking nice. Okay, we're good. We're back. We're back and we're rolling. Okay. Cool. So I don't see any questions. That's totally fine. One thing that I had a student ask me a very interesting question, and I thought it was an important thing to talk about, is the role of the pointer finger. Oh wow, we have questions. Okay, never mind. Never mind. Ooh, this is an interesting one. What are some of your favorite non-traditional pairings with cello in terms of duets or trios? That's really cool. So traditional trios and duos are kind of cello and piano, cello, violin, piano. I do have a duet partner who's a phenomenal violinist, and we like to play untraditional music as a traditional duo. I really wish there was more repertoire for violin and cello. You would think there'd be a lot, but there's not a whole lot. You know, some instruments that I really, really like a lot that I think would work really well with cello, vibraphone. For those of you who don't know what a vibraphone is, Google it, because it's one of the most ethereal, whimsical sounding instruments ever. I love vibraphone. Yes, thank you. Thank you for the other question. Yes, I will get to extensions. Absolutely. I also really love bass clarinet. I love bass clarinet. I also really like bassoon and contrabassoon. And I think it's really cool to kind of mix the lower ranged instruments in the orchestra family. You don't see it, it's happening more and more in modern music, but you don't see a lot of these pairings of bass instruments all together because bassoons, bass clarinets, and cellos all have a very large range. So we can be a melody instrument and a bass instrument. And I would love to see more mixing and matching with that. I know this is going to sound traditional, but I love cello paired with vocals, any kind of vocal, even if it's kind of folk singing or something from a culture's tradition that might be a very old folk style singing or traditional singing. I just love cello with voice. And what I mean by that is just cello, just voice. You don't see that a whole lot. There's usually piano or guitars, just cello and voice. It's really cool. Great question. Awesome. Okay, so now we are going to talk about extensions, and please don't apologize for questions. I would gladly demonstrate anything from Dvorak Concerto to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Everything in between. That's what the live streams are for. So you don't have to apologize. Does not matter. We cover everything. So extensions. So there are two types of extensions, main types of extensions, but the great thing is they use the same hand shape. And that's the first thing, very important thing. Extensions, you can have a lower first finger. So if I want to play B flat or E flat, I reach back there. Or a high fourth finger for sharp 4, like G sharp, C sharp. They all have this type of hand shape where my space is between 1 and 2. It does not matter if it's a low 1 or a high 4. Sometimes I see students kind of reaching, they kind of half do the extension and then reach with the pinky, or they really strain with a curled finger back. Space between 1 and 2. If you can do this motion where you can point straight up with your first finger, You're going to be great at extensions. So when you turn it on its side, like how your fingers are on the cello neck, and you curl the fingers, I tell people it's kind of like you're pointing to your ear straight up from the cello. And a lot of people reach with a curled first finger, and you're losing inches for your intonation. So that's a huge mistake. Don't do an extension with a curled finger. Point straight up towards your ear, and the string is going to touch the side of your finger. That's always not apparent. A lot of people, when you're in a closed hand shape, you kind of play on the tips of your fingerprint pads, and people try to keep that when they do an extension. So they curl the finger and kind of contort it, and they wonder why they're out of tune and it's not flat enough. Well, have that straight finger, the string's going to hit the side. Or so another common mistake, we talked about a lower one. For a higher four, some people, when you open up that space, your thumb still has to follow the second finger. It doesn't matter if you're extending up here, here, down here, down, up here. It doesn't matter. Your thumb should always follow the second finger. So you slide as if there's an imaginary string connecting the second finger to the thumb, or like little magnets. You should open, close, open, close. You can see my thumb on the inside here. Slide, close, slide, close, slide, close. And it's okay to let go of the first finger. Totally fine to have your first finger slightly hovering above the string. Don't have it come up. Don't have it flying in the air, but hovering, because to hold all four fingers down like that has a lot of tension here and then in the pinky finger, and we don't want that. Now let's say I had to go G sharp E on repeat. My wrist does this little teeter-totter. Tap, 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 tap. So I'm rotating like this, very slightly. Don't go wild with it. And that's how you can play adjacent notes at the extreme ends of your extension. So I'm going to check the chat out. That's a big... Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. That's okay. Someone said they're having connection issues. It's okay if you want. You could always try to hop on Instagram. I always am live on both Instagram and YouTube at once. So no worries. Going to first to fourth. Oh, your fingers. Yeah. So actually, I'm going to bring up a point. That's a very good comment. And I understand sometimes age is a factor with how our fingers age with our bodies. I was talking with a student about this, and it depends. It could be an issue of fatigue. It could be stamina. But regardless, if you're experiencing discomfort in your fingers, make sure you don't have a squeezing thumb, because I find if you have a very loose, relaxed thumb, it's hard to squeeze your fingers and press. In my studio, press and pressure are swear words. We don't use those words because it has connotations that aren't good. In terms of pressing down the string or applying pressure, it kind of implies this force. We say weight in the string, my bow arm weight, my left hand weight. we use the term weight or weighed down. But if your thumb is squeezing, then it's very likely your other fingers are squeezing as well. If your thumb is relaxed, your fingers will usually follow. And that's kind of the blessing and the curse of having everything so interconnected in your hand. So if you find the thumb can squeeze a lot if you have transitions. Transitions include a string crossing or a shift. So if you have those in your music, it can be a sign that your thumb is squeezing during those. So one example, I'm going to take the swan because it's slow and it's a good one for this exercise. So even right there, we have a shift. I'm really trying to focus on just my thumb sliding back. And then there, another shift. So we have two shifts in a row. Slide it up. Just like that. So I'm not really going full out, like vibrating a lot or using a lot of dynamics. I think when it comes to stuff like this, it's easier to practice less factors in a row. So we just want to focus on the left hand. So to not do a lot of vibrato, not a lot of dynamics. We're just kind of keeping it easy, like a mezzo piano-ish. And the other thing you'll notice is I'm sliding a little bit between my shifts. That's another thing that could cause your hand to cramp up. That's a good point. I'm an adult learner. I played violin for a bit and need to get used to reaching. Yes, that's very, very true. For those of you who might not know, well, you'll know it by sight. A violin is significantly smaller than a cello, right? And as a result, think of all the ratios and they get shrunken? They shrink? Oh, they are much smaller. So the notes are very close together on the violin. They're very close together. So then when you go on cello, those notes spread apart. Now imagine double bass. Those notes are like miles apart. I almost played double bass. Fun fact. I could have been the bass doll. Doesn't really have the same ring to it. I almost played double bass. I think I scared my mother because she realized that would have to go in the car. But no, ultimately, cello won out. I was very drawn to cello. There was like a very brief moment that I considered double bass, but it was always cello. But double bass would have been hard for me because I've really had to adapt for cello and my small hands. So anyways, in some other life, in a different universe, there's a double bass doll somewhere out there on Instagram. But yeah, I wouldn't trade it. I love cello. I love cello so much. Sorry, sliding. If you slide, that's going to keep your finger connection. Oftentimes, people kind of shift or come off the string in a wide arc or kind of like that. If you keep the I tell students that's what your shifts should sound like. when you're practicing them slowly. And then if you do it a tempo and you're able to be more accurate and do them a little faster, it's going to take away the sliding sound. And for the longest time, I didn't want to slide during my shifts because I thought that wasn't clean, and I was jerking my hand all around, up and down, shifting, and I was a very tense shifter. So that's something that is very important. Also, this doll commented, I have a small car and 3 teens and a cello. God bless your heart. 3 teenagers. Oh, man. Bless you. Wow. And a cello. That's amazing. That's great. So those are kind of some of my tips for relaxing with the left hand. Oh, okay, this is a very good point. I need to work on smoothing out my notes. I tend to play them one by one instead of smoothly. I need to memorize the notes so I can read them better. Yeah, definitely kind of anticipating your notes is a part of it. Another part of it, well, there's a couple things, but this is a very common thing I talk about a lot and I hear about with my students is kind of, we want to be such studious pupils that we really look at the music one note at a time. Okay, here's my F sharp, 3rd finger. I got to go to a 4th finger G. I got to... that's often how we start learning notes. But then what happens is that kind of leaks into our playing, and instead of saying a sentence, we sound like this when we play. It kind of sounds like one word at a time and not a sentence. I tell my students a musical phrase is like a sentence in reading, and we often talk about how do we find the punctuation points? What does a period look like in music notation on a staff sheet? What does a sentence look like? So my last teacher, who I absolutely adore, Yehuda Hanani, had very funny analogy. He would say, I have one rule in my studio, and that's only one rule. All the smaller notes will lead you to the bigger notes. And I was kind of like, huh? Because it sounds very simple, but it's much easier to say than to do. So we're going to actually go back to the swan example. All the smaller notes will lead you to the bigger note. So the swan starts with quarter notes. And when you have a bunch of one type of rhythm, so we're starting with quarter notes, you should think of them as kind of like a hill. And then eventually you're going to get over the hump of the hill. Or like a rubber band, you're pulling the tension and you're eventually going to let go of the rubber band. So these quarter notes in the swan lead you to a tied half note. So you follow this constant rhythm until you get to a longer note value. So let's try it. So that's your destination. A half note, A half note. Going, going, going. A dotted half note, I believe. So my teacher would go, that B belongs to the C. Often people go, that A is kind of our first stopping point. Arrival, reply. So since we arrived to a tied half note, we kind of start the process over again. We have an eighth note now. That's our new baby note leading into the dotted half note. Let's take something really easy. I shouldn't say easy because it's relative to everybody. As somebody who's been playing for over 20 years, French folk song sounds easy, but if you're in year one, French folk song is hard. So I shouldn't say it in those terms. It's all relative. Let's take French folk song. Starts all in quarter notes. Okay? They lead all the way to the dotted half note. First phrase. Then the pattern repeats, but on a different string. That's our second sentence. So experiment with this in your own repertoire. I'll give you another example. Dvorak Cello Concerto, the opening. You have dotted quarter, 2/16 and a half note. A lot of people will play ba da da da. It's ba ba da da. Your 16th notes are the smaller notes leading into the larger note. So again, sorry, I should play it. It's not. Right there, A, F sharp, B. That's the part that should be like a little nugget together. So what's the rule? When you have a note value and you have, it could be 2 of them, 3 of them, 13 of them in a row. They will eventually lead you to a larger note value. And that larger note value is kind of your period at the end of a sentence. Now, here's a question. Well, what if I have a smaller note value after? That means your sentence is still continuing. So if you have quarter notes, and then eighth notes, and then 16th notes, that momentum is eventually going to bring you to a slower rhythmic value. So if you have quarter notes, eighth notes, 16ths, and quarter, that quarter note is your return to a period, a start of a new musical idea. Because again, the progression is faster rhythm, shorter rhythm, and then eventually we go to a slower rhythm again. Quicker, quicker, quicker. Oh, there's our quarter note. Let me know if you have any questions on that. I could even grab some music and show you guys how it looks on the page, but I really think hearing it on the cello is the best way. I have so much music in my mind, I just need to learn the language. And that's another thing too. You know, I have some students who have never read music before, and that's something we work on. Or they played an instrument in treble clef and now they're in bass clef. So when that happens, I often tell people you need to be patient with yourself because you are learning a second language. It has its own vocabulary, it has its own symbols. There are so many symbols in music. There are abbreviations. There's a lot of Italian also involved. So there are definitely a lot of parts that resemble learning a new language, you know, very much hand in hand. Learning new terminology, learning what the symbols mean. It's very, very similar. So if you're frustrated with your note reading, imagine you're learning a language you don't know how to speak, because that's what's happening, essentially. This is a good point. I need to play with online music so I can work on tempo. That's a very good idea, absolutely. What I would encourage you to do if you are going to play along, I know enough to be dangerous. Yeah, I mean, what I would advise, it would be even better if you find a play along video that includes a metronome click, because the most efficient way to get that sense of inner pulse, inner tempo, is having a metronome going on, and eventually you want to internalize the metronome and that beat. And a lot of people on YouTube have it. I know that a lot of the videos I've done in the past include a metronome, because having that core sense of your pulse is so crucial and important. So if you can, look for something that has a metronome click involved. Yes, there is an app. It's been a while since I've looked into it. It's called Tom Play. Tom as in the name, and then play as in to play music. Tom Play, I worked with them a long time ago when they were just starting to come onto the market, and basically it's a music program where you can have the sheet music on the screen, and you can put on a metronome, you can put on the piano accompaniment, and you'll see a cursor kind of moving along to the click of the metronome over the sheet music. It might be something worth giving a try. All right, we're on to Bach, one of my favorites. You're about to learn the Sarabande from Bach Suite 1. Yes. I love Bach. Oh, it's so good. Can you talk a little bit about double stops or playing one note along with others? Absolutely. Let me go get my Bach book. My Bach book. All right. Doop-a-doop-boop-boop. All right. Bach Suite 1. Yes. Okay, this is excellent, because I have an exercise for you, my wonderful doll on YouTube. All right. Okay. So, one thing to think about with the Bach suites, this is such a very important way to think of them. The Bach cello suites, you are the melody, you are the accompaniment, You are the harmony. You have all of these roles on one instrument. That's one reason like a lot of people who study the suites eventually start to see this and learn this. We know the suites are legendary for cello, and I really think that's one of the reasons why, because for Bach's time, you have to think about when these were written. Like, cello was kind of a basso continuo. It would play kind of these low drones along with harpsichord, sometimes in a string ensemble. It wasn't quite seen as the melodic instrument it is today. So these suites are revolutionary. So what I will tell you is all the notes in these double stops and chords, they're not created equal. So a big exercise for the Sarabande is to figure out which notes in your chord are the melody. I must take a sip. Hold on. Sorry. Yes. Even my water bottle is black. Everything I own is black. Actually, that's not true. I do have a pink one. That is a lot of fun. So, how do I know what the melody is? So I'm looking at my part. Bar 1 in the Sarabande, it's a little more obvious here because the top voice has rhythm that the bottom notes of the chord don't. So what I would tell you, I'm going to start with bar 1, is to play the notes of the melody only. So but then we come to which note is the melody? We have a quarter note. Kind of gives it away by putting the trill, but let's pretend the trill's not there. You have to look at the notes around the chord. What notes, the notes that go into the chord and come out of the chord usually revolve around one note of the chord. So we have, I'm going to play 3 options. Well, the other 2 don't really make sense. It has to be the B. Because it fits so nicely into the notes around it. B, C, B, A, G. So, what I will tell you, oh, thank you. What I will tell you is a lot of people play the Sarabande kind of like they try to play everything equal. Another thing I would tell you to do is to pluck your chords. That's how you should bow your chords in Bach. This is a very uniquely thing that's a part of Bach. We're not doing Elgar concerto chords that are kind of, they remind me of like power, distortion, guitar chords where you really lay into them thick. That's not what Bach chords are. So pluck. And 3. So... kind of connect the melody around it. So I don't hold on to the middle. In this case, we're talking about the top line, right? Almost think of it as kind of smeared string crossings. And that's kind of the bowed version of our plucking. So again, the Sarabande, the chords are usually lighter. They're more graceful, they're more elegant. Don't lean into anything really, really hard and harshly. So step one, let me see. I'm trying to find a good spot. I'm going to take the last 4 bars because there's more. There are more double stops here. So the last 4 bars, we're going to play only the melodic notes of each chord. So my first bar, I have this. Well, everything's mostly on the D string, right? And we're going up the cello. So I'm going to stick to my top notes of the chord. Did you hear that bass note pop in? We got to address that for a second. That low G sharp, that wasn't in a chord, so I didn't take it out. That's in the line. This is a textbook example of how you're the melody and you are the bass working together. That low G sharp comes out of nowhere. It really, if you were singing it as a vocalist, you would be like, I'm out. That's way too much of a jump for a melody. And a lot of people play, when they first learn Bach, they rush to it. They try to connect it, even though it's not a part of the line. The line is this. It's all A string, baby. So what you need to do, give a little bit of breath for the bass, and then you reply with that A string tone, okay? So if you're, let's say we're going to do a crescendo. You have to come back to that initial volume to connect the melody, okay? So when you have this melodic line and these dropped bass notes, allow them to be different. Give them a little bit of space, okay? So I'm going to keep going. I'm sorry. I keep talking. I promise I'm going to get to the end with this melodic line. So now that's on the bottom of the double stop. That's how it's written in the part. That's a little aside on the bass. Ending, bass. Those are 2 separate notes, even though they're both G's. That's another pop. Again, just look at it. You can see it visually in the music. When the music does this in Bach, two voices, melody, bass. Don't try to connect them. It's not as dramatic. And you're trying to connect things that don't belong together. I mean, they work together to make the music beautiful. Oh, you're most welcome. Once you get me started on Bach, I don't stop. I could go on Bach forever. I could literally talk about him forever. So now when you add in the chords and double stops, don't lose that line. Don't do that. Roll up to the melody gracefully. You can roll in the volume of the line. If you want to do a crescendo, you can do that. Just don't lay on the chords so thickly that we lose the melody. So maybe something like that. Okay? I hope that really helps. I would even spend a whole day just playing the top. Well, I'm gonna give you a little cheat sheet in this Sarabande. I want you to go. You're welcome. I figure this out in the other movements that have double stops like the Sarabandes, but in this Sarabande, the melody is always the top note of the chord in the double stop. The only exception is 3 from the end. When we have that da, B, C, A, B, that kind of lower counter melody, you want to bring that out a little bit. Other than that, in this movement, your melody's always on top of the chord. It's not always that way for the Sarabandes though. But for this one, it's always the top line. I would spend a full day playing just the top line. Really get used to it. Have that be your normal sound. So then when you add the chords, if you kind of distort that line and you go, man, I don't hear the melody like I did yesterday, then you know something is off with the chords. Whereas if you start with the chords and you kind of make it work, it's kind of harder to hear the errors. Oh, anytime someone asks about Bach on a live stream, you make my day. You really do. But my dolls, thank you so much for a wonderful live stream. I can't believe the hour's already flown by. Since we are at the end, I do want to make another announcement for those of you who might just be joining us. In the chat room, both on YouTube and Instagram, you are going to see a pinned link. That link is for an incredible group called the Rock Orchestra. And some of you saw me announce this on my page earlier. I am going to be joining them on tour starting on Saturday. And I'm so excited. I'm so excited to be joining them. Please come out, even if I'm not in the leg of your city. It's an incredible show. It's 13, I believe it is 12 or 13 musicians on stage, electric strings, winds, brass, incredible singers, drums, percussion, and we're rocking out to Metallica, Evanescence, everything in between. We're just covering a lot of eras of rock and roll on stage. It's a whole production with set and costumes, and it's incredible. I had so much fun rehearsing with them in February, and I am going to be joining them starting with the Louisiana show in Lafayette, all the way through New Mexico. So I'm going to be doing the latter half of March. So if you go on that link and you live anywhere near those cities, Lafayette, Louisiana, Texas, we're covering so many shows in Texas. So I'm sure we're coming to you if you live in Texas, and Albuquerque, New Mexico. If you're near any of those cities in March, come out. I would love to have some dolls in the audience. That would be so cool. I'm very honored to be joining this cast, and the music is incredible, these arrangements of these rock and roll charts. So please check out the link if you are interested in the tour dates. And again, I'll be with them for most of the month of March. All right, my dolls, thank you so much for joining this early live stream. I know it's earlier than usual, but I had to do it today before touring. So I'm very glad people came out and still contributed beautifully to the conversation and asked wonderful questions. Thank you all so much. I will see you all in April for our next live stream. And in the meantime, as I always say, happy practicing, my dolls. Bye-bye.